Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southan. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me the lovely Fleur Lonsdale. Fleur is a captivating speaker, mindset coach, and entrepreneur. Her extraordinary journey of adventure, resilience, and personal triumphs has empowered her to inspire audiences around the world. Having explored the globe and conquered extreme sports, Fleur's own experience of overcoming adversity, including a late miscarriage, sparked a deep calling to support women facing trauma and a loss of identity. With unwavering dedication, she helps individuals break free from their struggles and find their inner strength. As a dynamic speaker, Fleur has shared her inspiring story with countless audiences, leaving them motivated and ready to overcome challenges. Her transformative message and practical strategies empower them to reclaim their lives, navigate through hardship, and rediscover their purpose. Fleur is a catalyst for change, using her own journey of resilience to guide and inspire others on their path to healing and personal growth. Thank you so much for joining us, Fleur.
Welcome. Great to be here.
Did you want to share a little bit more about the path that has led you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, this time, pretty much last year, a little bit further down the track, we lost our girl at 17 weeks pregnant. So I'd had a perfectly normal first trimester, apart from the end of the first trimester around week 11 or 12 when I was actually in Australia, I started getting vertigo, something called vestibular neuritis, which is what they said it was. Whether or not this was actually linked to the baby or not, I have no idea. But I was not in a good place. Like I couldn't walk, like my partner had to basically hold me to sort of go anywhere. And then, we got back from holiday in Oz, and like one morning I couldn't even open my eyes. Like I was lying in bed and I just couldn't even open my eyes. And I was just like, this isn't right. And I called my midwife and she was like, look, it's unlikely that it's linked. But I think it's a good idea that you go to the doctor. So I did all that. And the doctor was like, look, don't worry. It'll be fine. It won't be linked to your baby. I'm sure your baby will be fine. And then we had our 12-week scan a little late. So it was around 13 something weeks. And, you go to your 12-week scan, really excited, first time to see your baby first. I guess I literally always think about the Bridget Jones scene where Bridget Jones goes and gets her ultrasound. I'm like, that's what I expect this to be like. And it obviously wasn't. Not even close to that. I was like, man, I need to go to movies. I can have this experience. But we walked in and it just, lay down, and obviously you've got the full bladder and whatnot. And the lady who was doing the ultrasound just didn't really say anything, was really silent. And I was like, okay. And that, I don't know if you've had it, but when the baby's facing the camera, and it's quite scary looking because it's just a skull. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, what the heck? That's not really what I was expecting to see. And anyway, I can laugh about it now. The ultrasound lady, I don't know why I can't remember what ultrasound people are called, but she she just sort of said, so this isn't really looking the way that we want it to be looking. So I'm going to have to send this off to a specialist to have a look at. And obviously, you and your partner, you don't know what you're looking for, right? You don't know what you're looking at. It just looks like a little baby. And you're like, oh, that's a little baby. And she sort of showed us the back of their neck, the nuchal fold, which is obviously meant to, she said it was meant to measure below 3 mils. 3 mils was the max. And it was measuring 13 mils. So, and she sort of was, kind of acted as if that's not even really been a thing that they'd seen. So I guess they were kind of like, oh, we wouldn't even expect you to be here kind of thing. And so anyway, we obviously left there not in a good place. And both quite upset about it. And obviously it's the unknown, right? You don't know what's going on. You don't know what it means. It makes no sense for you. So we sort of just waited, and we just had to wait and see what the specialist said. So then you've just got in New Zealand, you've just got an online portal that just gets updated with your details. So then we get all these details that also don't really make sense, like, oh, your percentage of Down syndrome and your percentage of Edwards syndrome and your percentage of Turner syndrome and all this. And then a whole bunch of wording. And obviously I went and Googled it all, which was probably not a good idea, but at least for me, I felt like I had some sort of idea of what was happening. And so did that. Didn't look good. In fact, it really sounded terrible. It was like it was very bleak, I guess. And I was just like, how is this baby still like alive and kicking if this is so bleak, right? And so anyway, we got called to the specialists in our town, and they called us and they said, hey, look, the likelihood of this lasting much longer is very minimal. So we just kind of need you to be aware of that, and obviously keep an eye out for any bleeding or anything. And so at that point, Josh and I, my partner, we almost just gave up. We were like, oh, okay. So we like, this isn't going to work for us. So, okay. And it's really weird. It's a really weird place to be in. Like, you can't really imagine how you deal with it at that point. And I don't think we knew how to deal with it, but I remember getting home and Josh said, well, why are we even giving up on this? Like, just because these are the results doesn't mean that it's actually not going to happen. It doesn't mean this baby could heal. This baby, miracles happen. Like, these things could happen. And so we sort of decided, like, okay, let's change our perspective and just say, okay, this baby could be fine. Like, it could work out for us. So let's just expect that that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But sort of every week I'd get a call from the specialist, kind of like, how are you feeling? Have you noticed anything yet? And you're like, it's almost like you guys are just like on a waiting game that this isn't going to work. And so you're kind of having to manage your expectations versus their expectations, and obviously having the hope that maybe it will just work out. And so anyway, at week 16, they'd planned to have an amniocentesis. And so we'd had like all the chats and all the pre-tests and stuff. And they said, look, by that time, we'll be able to get enough fluid to find out what's going on. And then we'll be able to see the heart in the scans as well and see what's happening with the heart, etc. And so we decided to go for the amniocentesis. I think now, if I'd understood what an amniocentesis did when there was so much swelling for a baby, I probably wouldn't do it. However, you just don't know, right? So we had the amniocentesis. It obviously wasn't very nice. It was pretty, I wouldn't, I don't know if I'd say painful, but it's not a nice experience for anyone who's had them. And I think it was almost better for me because I couldn't see what was going on, whereas my partner was watching and he was like, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And the whole room was silent, and the doctor, and he was so amazing. I wish he was still in our town. He's moved to Melbourne, actually. Anyway, he's looking at the ultrasound and I'm looking at the ultrasound. And he's like, right, so we need to go and get some fluid in your amniotic sac. But currently your baby is literally taking up like 98% of the amniotic sac because there's so much swelling. So there was this tiny little point, like just where her legs were crossed. So you could see her little legs were crossed. And there was this tiny little space that he had to try and get into. So normally when you do an amnio, there's quite a bit more space. So, the likelihood of you hitting the baby or touching the baby is not that big, but for him, it was quite difficult. So there was uber silence in the room. Like it was just like, you would have, one of those moments where you're like, okay, literally no one's breathing. And then I was like, okay, I can't breathe either. Like I can't move because if I move, this is literally life or death right now. And anyway, we got the fluid and then I went home and I started just having tummy pains, but I thought, it's probably normal. I've just had a massive needle that's just gone through my whole abdomen. Like, of course, I'm going to have like ab pain. And then that night I had a bit of fever. And I also just thought that was normal. Another thing that didn't happen was for them to say, if this happens, or if you get fever, or if you get like bad pains, then please call us. So anyway, I went to work the next day and I was like, oh, I'm actually not feeling that great. That was a Thursday. And then I started having cramps and I was like, okay, this isn't feeling so great. And then they called us on Thursday, or was it Friday? I can't even remember. Anyway, they called us and said, we've got the tests back and your baby girl's you've got a baby girl and she's got Turner syndrome. Do you know what Turner syndrome is?
No, not in great depth. So if you want to,
Okay.
you can share a little bit about that if you like.
Yeah, sure. So Turner syndrome is where I think one of the chromosomes isn't formed properly, basically. And so it ends up being a girl because it has to be a girl because of the chromosomes. Okay. But they don't form any like female, I don't know if I'm thinking of the like genitalia is not the word, but like your whole female part of you, like inside, like you don't have the uterus.
Okay.
You don't have the hormones, so you can't bear children. You wouldn't essentially grow up like a normal girl would or woman would. And they tend to have heart difficulties or other organ difficulties. And a lot of them tend to end up being on drugs for a lot of time. Now, obviously, that might be a mass generalization, but from what they were sort of saying to us and what the swelling was showing was that, there was going to be heart issues. There was going to be all these other problems, or the blah, blah. And so then we sort of said, okay, well, what do we do? Like, and Josh and I had the conversation of terminating and thinking, we can't really think about bringing in someone into the world if that's what they're going to have to deal with. And then that night I actually had a prayer, and I'm not religious, but I had what I would call a prayer anyway. And I just said, look, if you're not going to make it, just please do this for me and make this easier. Because I don't want it to be any harder for you and I don't want it to be any harder for us either. And so the next day I got the cramping, just got way worse. And I called the doctor. I think maybe the doctor had called me. And I just said, look, I'm having cramps. And he said, look, if it gets worse, please just come into the hospital so we can just check. And I was like, okay. And then I remember my partner finished work at 5 o'clock and we both worked from home. So, and I was lying in bed at this point. I was like in not a good place. And he came in, he was like, what's wrong? I was like, oh, I really don't feel good. Really bad cramps. And he was like, no, this is quite bad. And I was like, yeah, it's quite bad. He was like, do you think we should go and like get something or get some medication or something? And I said, yeah. And actually that night before, I'd woken up in the middle of the night with this stabbing pain. Like I actually felt like I was going to die. I literally felt like I'd just been stabbed with a massive knife just under my sort of breastbone.
Mm.
And my partner's quite spiritual, so he like did a few things and then that just went. And I was like, okay, maybe just do some stuff, like maybe just like do something. And he was like, okay. And he tried, and I was like, it's not really yeah. Anyway, so he called my friend who's my neighbor, who'd unfortunately just had a miscarriage as well. And she came down and she said, Fleur, you're not having cramps, you're having contractions. Like these are contractions. And so then I sort of lost the plot a little bit because I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like I haven't got to that point yet. I don't know what to do if I go into labor. Like what happens? And so she said, I think it's a good idea that you go to hospital. You know, they can just help you out and you'll feel better if you're there. I hate hospitals. Well, saying that, I don't mind hospitals now. I hated hospitals and I was just like, I really don't want to go in there. And then I was just like, do you know what? I think this is a good idea. I think we should go. So anyway, we ended up going to hospital, thank goodness. And then my contractions slowed down a whole bunch. So then I was able to sort of relax a little bit. They did some blood tests and then they obviously did an ultrasound. And the first nurse was trying to do an ultrasound. I can't remember. It was one of the guys, I think, who we hadn't met. He was just like, oh, I'm just going to go find someone else. I'll be right back. And I was like, okay, look, you can tell me like if my body feels like this and I'm going into labor, I'm quite sure that my baby's not breathing. Like it's okay. Like I'm ready to hear it. It's okay, you know. Anyway, got someone else, and then they also were like, oh, I'm gonna go find another midwife. And then midwife came and she put the ultrasound on, like must have been my pulse, and could hear the heartbeat. But it obviously was my pulse. And I was like, there's no way that baby's heart's still beating. There's just no way. And she was like, hold on. And then she was like, no, I'm sorry, your baby's heart's not beating. And I was like, okay. And at that point, I already knew, right? So as much as it's horrendous when someone tells you your baby's heart's not beating, like when you already know, you're kind of like, I'm glad that you're just confirming it for me. And then anyway, they came back in and they said, look, we're really sorry, but you're showing signs of quite a bad infection. We need to get this baby out of you because you need to go. We need to put you on drugs, basically. We need to put IVs in you. And so then they induced me. And then that night at like 2 a.m., I gave birth to her on the toilet, which, you know, when I was like, I just need to go to the toilet. I just need to go to the toilet. And actually, those contractions, when they induced me, because I'd been having contractions for so long before that, I was kind of expecting it to last for ages. And it just didn't. I think I had like 2, maybe 3 contractions before she came out. And I was like, whoa. And then I was just like, and the midwife, you know, picked her up and she was, you know, only the size of my hand. And I was just like, man, that is so, like heartbreaking, of course, right? Mm. But she had swelling from like here out to like, if I was a baby, like out to like kind of like the length of my arms, and then her little arms were coming out the swelling, and then the swelling went all the way down to her stomach. Mm. So like her size of her body was like doubled by swelling. And she also looked really scary. She was almost like screaming, which wasn't very pleasant. Because it meant I didn't really want to look at her, because it was kind of like, man, did I did I do that? Like, is that like like your face is like screaming, like you're dying? It was really, really horrible. Anyway, then after that, we just put her in one of those little cots in a little freezer bag to keep her cold. And then I had to stay in hospital for 3 nights after that, just trying to get better. So I'd got an infection called chorioamniocentesis or something. Anyway, something like that. They call it chorio. And so what I learned afterwards is that because there was so much swelling in her when they pierced the amniotic sac, normally after an amniocentesis, the sac just closes itself and heals itself. But because there was no room in there, like it just sort of pushed out and didn't want to heal. So wherever that fluid goes then caused infection. So all my organs started to break down and weren't functioning. And so then I just had a lot of pain, like in my stomach, like a lot of pain everywhere. On top of obviously having to deal with losing a baby. But yeah, so that's kind of what happened in a nutshell. And I think after that, I went home. A lot of people didn't know that we were pregnant, because when we found out at this first scan, I was kind of like, well, like, yeah, I'd obviously told like my close friends and stuff, but we hadn't told everyone, like, oh, well, we're pregnant, but it's not looking good, kind of thing. And so anyway, the word sort of got around a little bit. I think I had a week off work. I should have taken more. I'd actually got like hit by a nerve with one of the needles that went into my arm. So they'd given me some more time off, but I felt bad. So I stupidly went back to work early, which I shouldn't have done, because it was a bad idea. If you're listening to this podcast, please don't go back to work thinking that you've got work to do. It was honestly the worst decision. And yeah, it was a really, really bizarre period of our lives. And I think I'm doing a course now at the moment for women dealing with pregnancy loss. And my partner spoke on our course yesterday, because I have a relationship section, and how men deal totally different to women, right? And my partner just wasn't, yeah, he was thinking about being a dad, and he was really excited about being a dad and all of that. But for him, he'd kind of lost something that wasn't really there. And so he wasn't, it didn't really seem to bother him that much. Whereas I was like, okay, like, hang on a minute, like, this is so huge. Like, my body has just been through so much. My emotions are all over the place. My hormones are all over the place. And I had, I really lost my identity. I really didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was meant to be. I hadn't been able to really do like any of my business. I also do, apart from coaching, I have like a business, a holistic health program that I have like a team and stuff with. And I just hadn't done any of that, because I just couldn't really face like being online, doing anything, having conversations with people. And so I was kind of like, man, I don't know, like, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do my business. I don't want to see any of my friends. I don't really want to spend time with my family. I don't really want to talk to anyone. I actually just want to stay at home and like watch movies and just keep watching movies, because then I don't have to think about my own life, right? And yeah, it just got to a point where I was just like, I really don't know. I really don't know what to do with myself. And it took a while. Obviously, I just decided to just do whatever I felt like doing, which was nothing, because I was still in a lot of pain. And I bled for a long time. Like you have that first few weeks of just heavy bleeding after labor anyway, but that just kept sort of going on and off for months and months and months. And I was just like, okay, my body's not getting back to normal. My body doesn't really want to, do what it's doing. And the healthcare system didn't help at all, unfortunately. Just like, oh, okay, well, we don't know why that's happening, so sorry. And yeah, I went and joined a couple of groups, and honestly, I just didn't feel, I don't know, I just didn't feel like talking. I didn't really feel like listening to anyone else's stories, but I did start to realize how common this actually was and how many people had gone through this too. And then I was sort of in shock because I just didn't know. I genuinely didn't realize. I knew that miscarriage was the thing. I knew that, it was possible to have a miscarriage before 12 weeks. I thought that once you hit 12 weeks, everything was fine. You'd be all good, right? And I was like, no, why does no one talk about this? Like, how have I got through 35 years of my life not knowing that you can lose a baby after 12 weeks? Like, no idea. And then I found out a friend of mine had lost a baby at like 38 weeks. And I was like, whoa, dude, like that's intense. And at that point, I was very grateful that I hadn't got to that point. But also I used that as an excuse for me to try and feel better. So a lot of what we do as women is we try and like lessen the way that we're feeling, even though it's all normal to feel the feels, because it's worse for someone else, right? And so we almost devaluate our feelings and our emotions, which actually doesn't help the healing process whatsoever. And anyway, I did that for a while. And then I was sort of looking for people. I was looking for people who'd been in a similar situation, but had actually helped, like transformed and been a new person. And I just couldn't find anyone. Like everyone that I spoke to was like, I'll never be able to get through that happened. And I was like, okay, so I understand that this will be part of me forever. But I'm a big believer that we can heal from anything that happens to us and that we can use that pain for a good thing. And so anyway, it took me a while, but I decided to go and do some coaching. I did some coaching in in Australia. And I went and did an NLP integrated course. And I went into that course having no idea what it was, having no idea what I was getting out of it, having no idea. I don't even know why I was there. I genuinely don't know why I went. But when something just feels right, I'm one of those people who just goes and does something, however scary it is, however much it's going to hurt, but it felt like I needed it. And so I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go do it. Doesn't matter. We'll just see. And I went there in a pretty dark place. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of tears. And I went in really unclear on my life, full of sadness. There was guilt. I was holding on to a lot of guilt. I was holding on to shame. I was holding on to anger, all of the things. And I was also extremely scared about getting pregnant again. And also very negative about getting pregnant again. I actually didn't want to have sex with my partner in case I get pregnant. The thought ran through my head of what would happen if I were to get pregnant and it wasn't good. And so at that time I was like, my partner really wants to have a kid. I want to have a kid, but I cannot be in this situation and get pregnant, because it will be horrendous for the baby. It'll be horrendous for me. And so I knew I had to do something, because we wanted to have a family, right? And if I couldn't imagine going through pregnancy again, then that wasn't going to be an option, really. And so anyway, I left that course like a different human. I was excited about life. I was excited about getting pregnant. I was actually excited about being me. I was excited about what I was going to do with myself. I was excited about my business again, which had felt like a long time. And I was just happy, I guess. And I felt like I'd just really lost that happiness. And so I left there and actually signed up straight away to the next course. I was like, I need to do more of this. And I just realized how different I felt. And I'd released a lot of the pain that I was holding on to, that I thought was physical, but was emotional. And I was able to move again. I was actually like, I took a photo just because I found it crazy. I didn't even realize, but I was stretching. We were doing like some dancing and I was stretching, and I was able to bend backwards, which I hadn't been able to do at all. And I was just like, man, like, what did I just do in order for me to for that to happen? I don't even understand. And a lot of it I still don't understand, let's be honest. But because it changed so much for me, at that point, I was like, I need to do something for women who have been through this, because if I can help women who were feeling that anxious about getting pregnant again, that scared about getting pregnant again, or what that means, then to feel great and not worried, like at all. Like it seems crazy, but literally like not at all. Like, I need to share this. I was like, this needs to be a thing. And I started looking around and I was like, man, no one's helping people with this stuff. Like, this is major. I was like, how is there no one helping people with this? Anyway, so I decided to start building out a course. And actually, I just started doing some one-on-one coaching. And funnily enough, most of my coaching clients aren't pregnancy loss women. I've got a couple, but a lot of them are just women who've dealt with trauma, and trauma that they just need to release and let go of. And the pregnancy loss thing is something that I'm really passionate about helping women with, because I genuinely think and believe that they don't see that it's possible to heal from that. And I also see, I don't know about you, but I've been like part of these groups and Facebook groups and communities. And there's so much like shutting people down for saying stuff. They're like, oh, you can't say that in this group. You've got to go to another group and talk about it in there. I'm like, hang on. Like, we're all in this together. There shouldn't be like one thing that we can talk about and another thing that we can't talk about. We should just be able to speak what we want to speak. And I find it, I'm not really sure why it confuses the hell out of me, but I'm like in these groups and I want to help someone, or I want to like share something with them. And then an admin will be like, oh, by the way, you can't talk about that in this group. This is only a loss group. Like, we can't talk about pregnancies in here. And I'm like, but loss is about pregnancy. Like, it's all one thing. Like, if you try and separate these things into like 8 different parts, like, people are going to be so confused. They're not actually going to want to say anything because they're so scared that an admin's going to be like, can't say that in here. I was just like, it doesn't feel supportive at all. And so my aim is to actually just have a group of people who feel supported, whatever stage that they're in, whether they've had 4 children and they've lost one, or they lost one 15 years ago and they're still grieving, or if it's brand new and they lost one, a couple of weeks ago. Like, the joy is that we all get to be in this together and actually see that there is life after this too, right? And I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in what if or what would have been and not be able to look forward. So a lot of what I do is about visualizing and creating and rebuilding that life that you actually want, especially once we've healed all the trauma and got rid of all of the emotions and beliefs that we're holding on to. Because a lot of what I find, especially like women who go through pregnancy loss, all deal with things differently, right? And so we've got some people who have a loss and they just seem to sort of bounce back as if it was nothing. And then other women who grieve for 20 plus years. And a lot of that comes down to the beliefs that they're holding on to. Like, what does losing a baby mean in terms of your beliefs? Like, is it the fact that if you're not a mom, that you're not worthy, or the only reason that you're a woman is to bear children, or you're just not good enough if you can't do this, or it's your fault, or, you know, you're the one who made this happen. And, you know, I'm not loved if I can't have children, or all of the things. And there's so much to be said around like the media, what we're shared as what women are meant to be. Even like now I watch some, like, for example, it's something like Bridgerton. It's not Bridgerton. I'm trying to think what it is. It's like a thing like Bridgerton, like set in that era, where the woman is just like, right, have a baby. Oh, you had a miscarriage. Right. Have another baby, or have a miscarriage, or have another baby. Oh, man, like, what is this? And it's just like, well, you're just not worthy. you're not going to be married to me if you don't have a baby. Like, I'm going to get rid of you. And we're like fed this. People watch this. And I'm like, what are we teaching our communities? Like, I get that was what that was like back then, but that is not how it should be now. And we should not be feeding that to people. That is fully subconscious programming right there. And if you think you bring up a daughter into this world and, well, the only reason that you're here is to bear children, and then you can't have them, like, you can imagine what that does to someone's mind and someone's everything. Like, it's hardcore. So yeah, anyway, that's what I'm really passionate about, changing, just because I've managed to change it in myself, and now I get to do it for other people. Sorry, that's a really long-winded introduction of my story.
One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives.
I'll just keep
No,
talking.
completely fine. You touched on so many incredible topics and points through what you were sharing then as well. The fact that we are left on our own, like we're going through this really difficult time, one of the worst and probably darkest times of our lives. And we don't have that support system there. We don't get it from the medical system for some unknown reason. There's no follow-ups, there's no information. You are left on your own to do all of the research.
Yeah.
And you can very easily go down rabbit holes that make your whole mental state so much worse.
Yeah.
There was so much of what you said I just resonated with in terms of my own story as well. But even in terms of the support groups that you see on Facebook, they tend to, what I noticed and what I actually had women tell me, like clients that I supported as well, was they would often keep you stuck in the pain, stuck in the darkness. And it is very filtered in terms of what you can talk about and what you can't talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's something that I do notice as well. And they don't often give you ways out of it. So you could be in the position, which you are and I am. I commented into a group once years ago, and it wasn't anything to do with what I actually do. I was just posting in, asking, how everyone has been, and like sort of like a motivational type post. And I ended up having admin reaching out to me saying, you can't post something in there like that. We've done research on you. We know who you are. If you want,
what? Like, you don't want people to get help? What
yes.
is that? Like, why is that a thing? It's so strange.
Yeah. So she's like, you can become a peer support person and I was like, are you serious? Like, for me to just offer some type of light in that person's life, whoever read that day, I can't be who I am. I have to be associated with you somehow. I can't be just someone coming in. I can't be just a lost mum and offering some type of hope for someone.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, well, we're not going to take your post down, but just don't post anything like that. And I was like, whatever. I'm not going to post in that group anymore. And that's what my clients were saying. Essentially, they want to keep you in that pain, but then they don't offer you any support in terms of how to move out of it.
Yeah. Because they don't know how to do it right either.
No, exactly. They don't have the capacity to do it. They don't have the tools. And I was so much like you in terms of like when you came out the other side of your experience, you're like, why did I feel like I had to navigate this all on my own? There has to be a better way, because there is a beautiful life on the other side. But women, like you just said before, they're not shown that is possible. At every sort of turn point of their life, they are given, you have to show up as a woman, you have to show up happy, you have to show up, you can't have a meltdown, you can't show emotions, you can't grieve, because what do you have to grieve about? So at any point, they're not given the support to go, oh, you know what? You've been through hell. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to scream. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to feel like all of the emotions. And like you said before, like feel all the feels, because, they're all there. We're human. And to be human is to show and feel emotions.
Yeah.
That's how our body is designed. And we're shut down. And even I didn't even know about that show, but I was like, when you said that, I was like, holy crap, they're putting that on TV. And that is what people are watching.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like that in the olden days. Like my grandma went through multiple miscarriages in between each successful pregnancy. And she was told that she just had to pretty much,
Keep
pick
going.
herself
Yeah.
up. Yeah, keep going. But it definitely shouldn't be like that now. There is so many more resources out there for women. There can be a better understanding if I just don't know where where that's meant to start, because there's so much that women can use now in terms of moving forward and healing and recovering. It's our divine right to
Yeah.
do that. And I love that you've been able to be able to see that. I love that you've been able to use your experience and the growth that you went through, and then going, oh my gosh, I need to share this because this is possible. And it's hard. Like I've spoken to other women, and that's what, their mindset was too. Like they needed to turn to someone who has been through their experience, but has got on the other side. They needed to look up to that person and reach and go, okay, so that's someone I aspire to, because it's possible. And there needs to be more of that being fed to women, that it is possible to heal. It's possible to recover. Or healing and recovering is an ever evolving journey. It's not like you're never just done. But they don't have to stay in the pain. They don't have to stay in that darkness, in the grief, in the heartache.
One of my clients that I've got now, I remember having her discovery call, and she sort of said, I've seen what you've been through, and I know I've seen your transformation, and I'm kind of blown away. She said, look, I get triggered every day, all day. I almost can't even see my friends anymore. And she asked me, she said, do you still get triggered? And I said, no, I don't. And she was like, I don't understand. Like, how? I was like, well, I guess I healed. I was like, I can't really tell you exactly what, but no, I feel immense love and hope for other women who are pregnant. Like, there is not one part of me that goes, oh, I would wish what happened to you or me. Like, not at all. Right. So thank God that there's women who don't have to go through what we had to go through. Because imagine if they did, if we saw it happen more and more and more, then maybe we wouldn't believe that we can have healthy kids, right? But I think it's really important for us to have an awareness that it can happen, but it doesn't happen all the time. And just because it's happened to you once doesn't mean it's going to happen to you again. And it's so easy for us to get into a mindset of, oh, well, it's happened to me once, so the likelihood of it happening to me again is more, which is actually not scientific at all. But yeah, Eva, I can't remember what something else she said. She just said, I'm just constantly sad all the time. And I said, you don't have to be sad. Well, like, we get to actually choose how we feel. Yes, there's obviously some deep stuff that we need to heal. And what's funny is, since taking her through the coaching, so much of the things that we're healing about are nothing to do with the pregnancy loss. They are way before that. And so, because there's so much other things that have happened in people's lives that cause an event to have such a major impact on them, when you actually heal what happened way, way back, the impact is a lot less. And then you have the resources that you can actually use if it did happen again, unfortunately, that you could change that and that you would know how to deal with it. And that's what's, I think, really, really important for women to realize that they can do.
It's good that you mentioned that, because it's also stuff that I bring awareness to as well, is that what is sort of triggering us right now isn't necessarily the moment, the experience. It's like unearthing a wound potentially that was created in childhood or in some other challenge that we've experienced in our life that we haven't or didn't have the tools to process at the time. And a lot of what I went through, obviously, in my miscarriage was beliefs about myself that I had created when I was in primary school.
Yep.
And I was like, holy hell, like this
Which is so common, hey?
yeah, yeah. And it's, yeah, absolutely something that, you know, you see time and time again is that what's coming up now it wasn't created when you went through the pregnancy loss. It was created long before that.
Mm.
And more often than not, it is from some time earlier in our childhood or in our, teenage years, early years, when our belief system was being formed. And then we get to a certain age where we then sort of start to cement that belief about ourselves and go, well, I'm not worthy to fit in. I'm a shy person. And then from those moments, we have experiences almost that reaffirm that belief about ourselves. And then obviously then I went through my miscarriage and I was like, well, of course, I'm not worthy. My body's broken. Like
Mm.
because that was my belief about myself my entire life.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with like endometriosis and all of these things like growing up. So I was like, my body's broken.
Mm.
And then I got to the miscarriage, my body's broken. Like it was this continual sort of pattern that I was replaying. But the miscarriage made me aware of that pattern and gave me the opportunity to change it. And yeah, I didn't realize in how many ways, obviously, then it was playing out in my life. Like the way we do
Mhm.
one thing is the way we do everything.
Yeah.
So I had all of this stuff just, thrust on me to process and, heal, as well as all the grief and the emotions and all of that. But, I think that awareness is key, that, just because you've gone through this experience now, it doesn't mean that you can't process it. It doesn't mean that you can't go back to where those beliefs were created and start to shift them. And then get to that point where you're not triggered because you have that deep sense of like self-worth and, tools that you can use. Then, seeing a pregnancy announcement on social media doesn't trigger you anymore.
Mm.
Being invited to a baby shower, you can go and you're not triggered anymore.
Mm.
And like you said before, you're not wishing like the worst on people so that they can understand your pain, which is a lot of the thought processes that women go through. Is like, I need you to know how, like, the pain that I'm experiencing. And that's a really hard place to be in, especially if you're not that type of person. But I love that you're obviously able to have these conversations with women and show them that it is possible to get to that point where you're not, I had a question come in from a lost mom and she's like, how do I avoid triggers? And I'm like, it's not about avoiding them.
You try avoiding them, they'll keep coming back to you.
Yeah, it's not about avoiding them. That's not the question. Like that shouldn't even be on the radar. Like that, because we need to understand that triggers are, like, in life, like triggers are just people, events, work, whatever. Like it's going to trigger an emotion regardless of what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You can never, ever avoid them because that means you're not going to leave your house.
Yeah.
But it's how you then process all of the rest of that. So if it does stir up an emotion, having the tools so that you can process it, and then eventually, like you said before, it doesn't become this intense, overwhelming event that kind of knocks you off your feet or sends you in a spiral or makes you have a meltdown.
Mm.
It is hard for them to see that that is possible because obviously confronting triggers would be a painful experience, but it is absolutely necessary in terms of if they want to be able to heal or not.
Yeah. So one thing I do with my clients who have a lot of triggers is, and this is quite a big part of my coaching, and that can be difficult for some people to understand straight away, but how your triggers are just emotions, right? So you've got an emotion coming up. When you can make sense that your emotion is actually just a thought pattern that's happening, and that thought pattern is literally coming from a belief, and that belief and that thought pattern, the belief comes from something that is outside of you, so it's not within you, and the thought is actually not real. So the belief isn't yours, the thought isn't real, and the emotion is what. So you're kind of making, and it's difficult to, a lot of women will listen to this and be like, well, that's BS. What are you talking about? And it's really difficult. Like if I'm not doing like a one-on-one and being able to take them through it systematically and what that looks like so that they can make sense of it. But that's the long and short of it, is that our emotions are actually just our thoughts, and our thoughts aren't real. So what are our emotions? And so we're making up a story that creates an emotion about someone else that has to do with us. And we get to choose what that is. So we can shift that. So once we actually let ourselves do the healing and be healed by a coach, because it's very hard to do that stuff by ourselves. Let's be honest. I couldn't do it by myself. I tried. It did not work. Once we've done that, we get to choose what those emotions are. And that's where the real joy and the real hope and the excitement comes in. And that's where you see the major shifts.
Yeah. It's about changing the meaning, isn't it? Like we make it mean something, and you're just like, well, what is that thought pattern? What does that belief actually mean about you? And then what is that emotion? Because if everything else kind of isn't true, like if you look at that thought pattern and go, well, that's not true. If you look at that belief, that's not true. So what is that emotion then? Because all of that rest of it isn't true. So what emotion can you choose, and what meaning can you make it mean the next time, which is not potentially that can be more empowering for you, and not trigger that emotion again, the next time around.
A really good example of that is looking at people who've been through a lot of sexual abuse as children. Like as kids, you don't think there's anything wrong with that, because for you, it's normally someone that loves you and that you love, right? So you connect that to the person that you love. It might be a form of affection. It might be a form of love. It might be a form of connection. It's only when we get to a point in our lives where someone says to us, oh, what? That happened? That's not normal. That's wrong. That shouldn't have happened. That you then go, oh, hang on. That was bad. That shouldn't have happened. Oh, that was abuse. So before that moment, as horrible as this is, for children who have been abused, for them, it's not abuse until someone else tells them that it is. And it's only then it can actually cause problems. Before that, it might not have even caused issues. And it's similar. It's the perception of what we see and what we're told too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good example too. Just, obviously said, like you said before, without actually having the person in front of you going through those triggers, going through those emotions, it's hard to kind of determine and share how that could look. So being able to use that example kind of can put things into perspective a little bit in terms of how that can all play out. And I want to talk about anxiety and fear of obviously getting pregnant again, because that is a huge, huge thing that women face. And a lot of women push through because they just like, I just need to fall pregnant again.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the best option mentally, physically, spiritually to just push through that fear and anxiety. Like you said within your story, there was no way. You had to process that for yourself first. And I believe that it is a really important thing for women to do, is to process the fear and anxiety before getting pregnant again, because it's a very, very scary time.
Yeah. 100%. And this is also quite difficult to talk about, but I see women who just kind of go back to back to back to back. And unfortunately, they might have like multiple losses, right? And whether or not it's linked, who knows? But for me, I had to be in a stable, comfortable, happy, joyful place to know that I was able to bring a baby. I'm carrying that baby. They are literally holding everything that I hold. They are feeling every single part of energy that I'm holding. They hear my language. They hear how I live. So, and I've been doing mindset work for a very long time. And I'm like, I want to bring a baby into this world that is going to be the best version of themselves. The last thing I need is to bring a baby who's going to be carrying all of the anxiety, all of the fear, all of the stress, all of the things that I'm dealing with because I won't go out and heal myself first. Like, it was a huge thing for me to go and find help, but I knew that I had to do it if I wanted to bring a baby into this world. Now, that is my decision, and not everyone is going to have the same decision. And I do see, if every woman who dealt with pregnancy loss or went through pregnancy loss of any sort could heal and feel happy and excited and calm about their next pregnancy, like the difference for them and their kids would be immense. I think people massively underestimate that. I think women massively underestimate the amount of stress that they put themselves under because of anxiety and fear. Like, anxiety and fear on the vibrational level are so low that your energy needs to be up high. Like, you're building a human. Your energy needs to be the highest. It needs to be the happy, the joyful, the dancing, the excitement. Like, if you want to have a healthy body and you want your baby to be healthy, for me, that was like number one. I had to do that. And I don't preach that probably enough. Preach is not the right word. I don't like talk about that enough. But I do think, and I see women, they're like, all I want is a baby. All I want is a baby. All I want is a baby. And I'm like, yeah, but you're wanting a baby because you don't have one. You're wanting someone from a place of loss. You're wanting something from a place of lack. The more and it's like manifestation. If you start saying you want to make 20K a month, you want to make 20K a month, you want to make 20K a month, you're going to keep wanting to make it because you don't have it yet. Whereas if you say, I'm happy and grateful, I'm making 20K a month, your vibrational levels change just because of your language. So you're happy and grateful that you've got a healthy baby inside you is very different to, I want a baby now. I want to be a mum now. And a lot of women don't realize the energy and energetics is so huge that is linked to the language that they use and to the way that they're feeling and the way that baby is built. Like, there's so much more than just like us as humans and a sperm like meeting an egg. There's so much more to it. And I'm just like, come on. Like, please, I get it. You want to be a mum and you will be a mum. You will. But see it because you're excited about being a mum. that you're excited about holding your mouth. You're excited about pregnancy. You're excited about growing your big belly. You're excited about giving labor. You know, it's not just, I want to hold that baby in my hands. Like, the vibration is so different. The energy is so different. And you can literally you can literally change that so easily, but the awareness isn't there. And it's the same with the anxiety and the fear. Like, it's like, I cannot imagine getting pregnant in the place that I was back then. I just can't at all. And I cannot see how women do it to themselves. But they, you know, and they do. And it doesn't mean that the baby's not going to go well. I'm not saying that at all. But just imagine what it could be like if you weren't holding on to that fear and that anxiety. Just imagine, you know, what if it could be easy?
And I think when you do choose to fall pregnant, you want it to be a beautiful experience. You want to be able to bond with your baby in your belly. And yes, you've gone through loss. Yes, the shine of pregnancy and the naivety of loss, like, it's all gone. Like, you've gone through something really hard, and it's about embracing that part of you, processing all of that, and you still can fall pregnant on the other side and have an incredibly beautiful pregnancy where you create like a beautiful bond with your baby, and then you can have that beautiful experience on the other side of that too, like in the birth, and connect with your baby and not have that, you know, sadness and depression still on the other side of it, and potentially not be able to connect with your baby because you're still so afraid of everything that's going to happen. I was only talking about this yesterday with the trauma. So essentially, like, pregnancy loss can be a very traumatic experience, and not for everyone, but it can be. It was for myself, and it sounds like it was a very traumatic experience for you as well. But I know that every mom is going to want the best for their baby. Like you said, you want to have an incredible, you want to bring your baby in the best way possible. So to do that, it starts with you first. It starts with you making the decision to process your experience, your loss experience. It starts with you processing the trauma, processing the emotions, all the thoughts, the beliefs that are coming in, because your trauma directly affects your baby. And
a lot of people don't realize that.
No. And again, like you said, you want to be shouting it from the rooftops and you're not doing it enough. And I'm like, I feel like this is something that really needs to be spoken about a lot more, is the baby can be born with the fight or flight response.
Oh, yeah.
Or the freeze or fawn response. Like, depending on the mother, it can absolutely be born with a unbalanced nervous system. And that's because we haven't, you're not given the opportunity to, or the awareness of what can happen if you don't choose to process the loss experience. And like you said, it's not to say that if you do fall pregnant and you haven't addressed anything, that it's too late, or you're not going to have a healthy pregnancy, or there's going to be something wrong with the baby. But to be given to give your baby the best opportunity to come through healthy, to come through, in a beautiful vibration, it is to process our trauma, our experience, the emotions, the thoughts, the beliefs, so that that's all clear from our body first, and then bringing new life into that.
Yeah, I think people massively underestimate where, like, beliefs can stem from. Like, a lot of the work, because all the work that I do is basically subconscious work. I've worked with people who've gone back like 117 lives, or maybe 2. But You imagine the girl that I coached, she went back 100. I was like, you just went back 117 lives. I was like, you've been holding on to that belief for over 117 lives. I was like, oh my gosh. But so you imagine what we hold on to, what we're holding on to, we might not even know, right? And what we're holding on to, we pass down. We give that all on. Like, it doesn't stop with us. And so imagine if we get to choose to do the work, and we get to choose to heal, and then we get to decide what it is that we want and bring in all the stuff that we want and choose our energy and choose our language and choose our life, what that will mean for our babies and our kids, how they will live. And I do see a lot of kids who are very different to their parents. And I'm like, I wonder if their parents are holding on to a whole bunch of stuff that they've passed down to their kids, and their kids are expressing that in a totally different form to their parents. I mean, the problem is with this stuff is it's very difficult to quantify. It's very difficult to scientifically prove stuff. But I'm like, really interesting, because the soul that's in that child is carrying a whole bunch of stuff, and it's brand new little child. It's got a lot of energy, that little kid. I'm like, wow, what did you pass down to it, you know? And I generally don't think that anyone really thinks about that at all.
No, and it's all about breaking generational patterns, isn't it? Like it's us choosing in the moment to be different and to clear all of that energy, all of the beliefs and emotions from all of the ancestors and generations that go before us. And like you said, it is literally that we pass that all down. So just because you might see your grandma, you're like, well, it just stops there. And it does, but it doesn't. It goes way beyond the people that you can physically see. And that has all been passed through. But it is that awareness piece of like, you know what, this doesn't serve me. This isn't right. This is not what I want for my future and for myself and for my baby. Like, how can I change this? It is an important topic, obviously. But yes, no, I do appreciate your time and all of the knowledge that you have shared. Do you want to just share with everyone where they can find you and potentially reach out to you if they need?
Yeah, of course. So my Instagram, I've got 2 Instagram handles. So one is where I share more mindset stuff, which is fleur.shes.unshakable. So She's Unshakable is my brand. And then I have another Instagram that I've just started called the Pregnancy Loss Coaching. So it's just at Pregnancy Loss Coaching. My website that will be up soon is shesunshakable.com. And there will be, if you want to get your hands on some pregnancy affirmations or some pregnancy after loss affirmations, you can go to shesunshakable.com/pregnancy loss and find them there. I also have another podcast called She's Unshakable, so you can go and listen to that too. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. And on Facebook, if you want to find me, I'm Fleur Lonsdale too. So I'm sure you can put that all in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. It'll all be one click away for people to find you. So that'll all be in the show notes. Definitely check it out. And if you want to reach out to Fleur and continue the conversation or anything that might have sort of jumped out at you today, just, head over to her. I really want to say I'm grateful for you to be here, Fleur, and and sharing your story so openly and vulnerably, and for what, how you show up in the world. Women need that, and they need you. So thank you.
Yeah, you too. Right back at you.
Thank you. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.